All right, and welcome to the show, Beto Dominguez. Welcome to the Lead Different podcast. It's great to have you on. This is kind of special because it's not often that one of our leaders that we interview happens to be also my younger brother, who has a very long career in law enforcement and is doing something pretty special. And it's kind of the
Mhm.
reason why we're having you on the show, Beto. Is you're running for office? It's your
Mhm.
first time running for a public office, and you're running for sheriff of Colfax County.
I am.
So, and you've been in law enforcement for over 20 years,
I have.
and you've been
Well,
in
18 years.
18 years,
Mhm.
close to 20 years,
Mhm.
and you've been in your entire law enforcement career has been in around Raton, the city of Raton, and Colfax County. So,
Mhm.
love to talk to you about your leadership journey today, and thank you for being on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this. I've been excited about it. So I appreciate you taking the time, brother.
Yeah, well, listen, at Why Not Leadership, we concentrate on our main emphasis is learning about how to help leaders lead
Mhm.
different through the power of self-awareness. And so what we're going to talk about today, what we're going to concentrate on is your leadership journey.
Mhm.
You've spent some time. Why don't you walk us through, because I obviously know your story. Walk us
Mhm.
through your path to where you are today, where you went to school, how you
Mhm.
got into law enforcement, and your path to now running for the top law enforcement job in the county where you live.
Absolutely. So obviously, I grew up in Albuquerque. Lived there most of my life, and it was great. It was awesome living there. I went to school. I went to UNM, and ultimately, at one point, I decided I wanted to go into law enforcement. Right before that, actually, I did some sales with you actually, and that was awesome. Being able to do that with you alongside you. But then again, I decided, hey, I'm gonna try out for law enforcement. So in 2005, I moved to Raton and I joined the Raton Police Department. I actually went to the academy in 2006. At that point, I was there for 11 years. The last 4 years that I was there, I actually served as the sergeant, one of the sergeants. There was two of us at the time. One of the sergeants for the Raton Police Department, and then the opportunity came up to be a part of the Colfax County Sheriff's Office. Sheriff Baca reached out to me, and I decided to take the opportunity. So I started there. I believe it was in September of six. Oh, now I have to think about it. Approximately 8 years ago. Let's put it that way. And so I initially started as a deputy, moved up in the ranks to detective, and then I was promoted to lieutenant detective. It was kind of a dual role because obviously we're not a huge agency, but we have a lot of hats to wear. So I did that for a couple of years, and ultimately now I'm just not just, but I currently hold the rank of lieutenant with the Colfax County Sheriff's Office. I've held that for a couple of years as well, and now I decided, well, it's time to see where the next step takes me. So I decided to run for sheriff of Colfax County. Our current sheriff is termed out at this point, so he's getting ready to retire, and therefore I decided, I guess it's the opportunity I've been waiting for to move up in my career. So that's kind of my journey to where I am today.
So tell me, you mentioned you had a sales career. So you
Mhm.
finished you finished UNM, and then you went into a sales career.
Mhm.
What led to the switch from, that's a big change going from
It is.
sales to
Mhm.
law enforcement. What went into the decision to become a police officer at that point? And you went to the academy in 2006. So when I'm doing the math, that's 20 years ago. So
Right, but I did leave law enforcement for a couple of years.
oh, gotcha. So you
Yeah,
had a break in between.
I had a little break. I actually, in that little break, I worked I guess a counseling service for kids and families,
Hmm.
and I did that for about 2 years, which was actually a lot of fun. I enjoyed working with families. I was able to connect families with um, resources. I
Hmm.
basically was a family services coordinator, and I did that for a couple of years, which was awesome. And like I said, it's kind of related in the same field where you're helping people, right? And that was ultimately what led me to go into law enforcement. I love helping people, and
Right.
I always want to be there for people. And I guess to me, I like to solve problems and help as much as I can. Ultimately, that's what I feel in my heart has been. I always like to be helpful, supportive, and in that what brought my switch from sales, which I enjoyed, but I decided, okay, now I want to give back a little, and that's what I decided to chase my career in law enforcement. So again, I've been doing it for about 18 years now, and it's probably one of the best decisions I ever made. I've enjoyed every minute of it to this point. I still look forward to it every single day. When I get up in the morning, it's always a new adventure. It's always something different. It's never the same, which is probably why I like it, because I think if I was doing the same thing over and over every single day, I might get a little bored. I'm probably borderline ADHD. I'm pretty sure I am. So that probably contributes to me always liking the change of every single day that brings.
Yeah. Do you mind letting us know? So what led to that break in the middle of your career? Because it sounds like you had a great track that you were on, and then you took a 2-year break, and then you came back. Tell us a little bit about that.
It was time. There had been some things early in my career that were a little overwhelming. Let's put it that way. Let's just say I within my 3rd or 4th year, I ended up dealing with an in custody death, and unfortunately, that led to a lot of it's kind of weird to be on that side, because it was not necessarily saying that we did something wrong. However, it was overwhelming mentally. And I thought, well, a good break would probably do me good. So I decided, step away from it. Now in New Mexico, you have up to 3 years, but I came back within 2 years where all I had to do was assert by waiver. So it's basically go and re-up my certification. And at that point, I felt ready to come back, and I was ready to be back on the road and do what I love, ultimately.
So it sounds like, well, I'd love to hear more about that situation, because it sounds like it impacted you, and that will help us understand you a little bit better and your leadership journey. So you mentioned you had an in custody death. The case has been tried. The case has been decided. So whatever you're able to tell us about it, give us a little bit more to help us get into it, because I think that helps us understand what you have to deal with. That's not one of the easiest situations in the world to deal with. Maybe give us a short synopsis of the situation, the battle that you went through, the coming out on the other side of it, and what you learned from it. That would be I think that would be very helpful for us to hear about.
Absolutely. So obviously, it was early in my career, as I mentioned. We had an in custody death where we had an individual that we were trying to arrest. There was about 3 of us that were involved, where we were trying to detain him. This guy was what we later came to find out. He had approximately what the lab technicians told us, at about 10 times the amount of cocaine that somebody can really handle, right? So you multiply that with adrenaline, with everything. I mean, we just could not control this guy. Ultimately, we ended up transporting him to the local jail. Well, when we got there, we found that he wasn't responsive. So myself and my partner began to do CPR, obviously what we're taught to do. And we worked on him, and we were unsuccessful, unfortunately. That was hard, because, I mean, anytime any life is lost, it's hard. It could be one of my own partners on the road, or somebody that we don't know. They still impact you, even though you don't know the person directly. So fast forward a little bit, we were actually, believe it or not, charged with involuntary manslaughter for the initial investigation that was conducted. So it was about a 2-year journey where we basically had to go through the steps of going to court, and ultimately we were exonerated. It was determined that, again, the gentleman that died, he didn't die by our actions. He died because at one point or another, his heart was going to give out because the amount of drugs that he had on board. So at the end of it, we were exonerated. Everything was dropped, and that was hard because, the impact that it has on not only yourself, on your family, on everyone around you. It takes you to a different place that you don't realize how much it impacts who you are, who you, how do I explain it? How people perceive you. But, at one point I decided, well, I guess people will make their assumptions and feel how they want to. But at the end of the day, I stand true to what we did. We did the best we could. Unfortunately, yes, a life was lost. But at the end of the day, we did everything we could. And again, it was determined that we didn't do anything wrong directly to cause his cause of death. So it was a long journey. It affected everyone around me. Not just me, my family, my friends. But ultimately, I still had my family and friends supporting me through it. And eventually, I was able to just go back to work, which was quite a relief.
So I want to take advantage of this opportunity because we don't often get to hear from your side. We live in a society where the mainstream media seems to almost indict police officers. Anytime there's a police involved death, immediately it looks like our media immediately blames the police. I hear stories. So I want to dig more into your side of it. You mentioned, the circumstances. You were trying to control this person, and then during the trying to gain control, did he lose consciousness, or what? Tell us a little bit more about that. And I don't know if you know how much of it you can say, but then you had to deal with the situation from a perspective of that this person's life was in your charge at the time, right? And then you got to the jail, you said, and he was unconscious, and you tried to revive him and couldn't successfully do that. So, because it sounds a lot like the George Floyd or the situation where was there excessive force, but really more importantly, I want to hear, what's it like as you're trying to restrain somebody who is on so much adrenaline and drugs, right? What's going through your mind? And there were 3 of you involved. What's going through your mind as you're in that situation? Because, it's easy to say, oh, well, you probably hear this all the time. Why didn't they shoot the gun out of his hand like in the movies, right? Why did they have to shoot? So you're often faced with the situation where you have to use lethal force because you have to diffuse the threat. But tell us about, in that situation, what was going through your mind as you're trying to restrain this person who was really hyped up on drugs and full of adrenaline, was fighting you and your partners?
So, it's kind of interesting because at that point, I felt like I was a pretty fit person. My partners were very fit officers, and to not be able to restrain somebody that was probably 70, 80 pounds lighter than us was kind of like, what's going on? Typically we're able to put somebody in handcuffs pretty easily. And it just became a situation where we couldn't control them. It was difficult. And we were kind of like, well, what's going on? That's when we kind of started to realize, okay, there's a little bit more going on here. So obviously we had to, step up what we're doing to try to restrain him. It even went as far as, placing him in handcuffs, putting him in the back of the car. And, again, I've been faced with that several times where you confront somebody that's possibly under the influence of drugs and or alcohol, but drugs are probably the hardest ones because you don't know what kind of drugs they're on. And the ability of somebody under the influence of a narcotic that's an accelerant, it's just mind blowing because you don't realize the amount of strength that these people have with that, again, adrenaline and being under the influence. So ultimately, it was kind of an eye-opening moment for all of us because we just couldn't control them. And, you think you have all the training, and I was, not fresh out of the academy, but I thought, well, I'm a new officer. I think I know what I'm doing. And to not be able to control it was difficult. I wanted to touch, it was determined too, it was kind of not well known at that time, but excited delirium. It's when again, a mixture of drugs, adrenaline, and everything like that, ultimately it leads to somebody's death. If it's not treated or controlled or reversed. So that's kind of where the excited delirium started becoming a little more known to law enforcement as well. So again, that was relieving for us because then, okay, we didn't directly harm this person. He died on his own accord because he had the amount of drugs that he had in his system. So that's, it was a lot to handle, to be honest with you. I mean, you just nothing really prepares you to deal with somebody that's under the influence like that until you deal with it. And then you're like, wow, it was an eye-opening experience.
Tell us about, you mentioned, because you went from being law enforcement to being a defendant. That had to be a different type of experience. Did you and your partners actually get booked and charged and have to go through everything you're normally on the other side of before, obviously, because you had to go to trial because you were criminally charged? So what was it like for you on that side of it? I'm sure it was friendly because these are your colleagues that were probably doing it, but I can imagine it had to have been very difficult.
It was. Again, we never were put into jail or anything like that. We were served and subpoenaed into court, which, I mean, as you guys know, it's never good to put a law enforcement officer in jail because most of the people don't like law enforcement that are in jail. But to be on that side was, kind of eye-opening, to go through the process, to have to appear in court on the other side of the desk. That was hard because you never expect to be on that side. And kind of like, kind of what you talked about earlier is, any law enforcement incidents that are reported by the news sometimes are blown out of proportion, where they just take this tiny little bit of what happened and kind of make their own story sometimes, not the full story. So that happened to us as well because we were in the newspaper. We were on all the local TV networks. So to see yourself on TV, it's like, wow, that's me. And I'm not on the right side. Now I'm being put on the opposite side. Pretty eye-opening. And of course, nobody ever wants to be on that side, especially as a law enforcement officer. That's the last thing you ever want to be. So yeah, it was a lot to take in, but again, through the help of friends, family, we were able to get through it. So I'm very fortunate for that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. You mentioned the impact that had on your family. So at the time, how old were you?
Gosh, now let's go back. I'm now 48, so I was about 39 or 40. No. Yeah, about 29. About 29. I think that's about the math. 29.
So you weren't quite 30 years old yet. So young in your career. You mentioned it was a 2-year process. So and I know from my knowledge of it, the community really came together to support you and your 2 colleagues because you were all charged. I think it was something called 3 Good Men or something like that. There were some fundraisers that were done to help you with the legal costs and things like that. What was that like for you? And tell us about the community support and how that came across. Because like as you said, there's 2 sides to every story. And I know from talking to you, one of the things that had to have been difficult is when you're being charged, you're not allowed to carry your service weapon, but threats were being made against you. You probably felt very vulnerable. Tell us a little bit about the vulnerable side of it, and then how the community stepped up to help you.
Absolutely, yeah. No, that's a good point because Yeah, absolutely. You know, if you are charged with a crime, you can't carry your weapon or a weapon for that matter. So yeah, you're used to carrying a weapon everywhere you go, you know, on duty or off duty, and to have that kind of taken away, it's like, okay, now what? What if something happens to me or my family? How am I going to defend them? There was threats. Yeah, there actually was threats made towards me and the other people involved. I mean, it even went as far as the FBI getting involved and saying, "Hey, this is happening. You guys be aware. Just be extra careful." So, you know, you got to figure that impact that you know, you're not only worried about yourself, but you're worried about your family and something happening in your family. So, with that being said, it was just, you know, it was a constant, you know, looking over your shoulder, unfortunately, because if something happened, how am I going to defend the people I love, right? Because I don't have that ability like I normally would as a law enforcement officer. We were never like stripped away of our badge or anything, but again, when you get put on administrative leave, there's certain restrictions. One is definitely not carrying a weapon. You can't present yourself as directly as law enforcement because you're technically on leave. So a lot of those things, you know, it made it difficult, but the community did come together. That was the best part. We had people and actual national organizations helping fund our attorney fees. Our attorney fees were really, really high. I mean, there was a lot of money spent on attorneys because at the point you are charged, you're kind of on your own as a law enforcement officer at that point. You got to figure out, how am I going to defend myself? How am I going to stay out of prison if this goes south and I end up getting convicted? We were charged. The charge was involuntary manslaughter, and that's a pretty serious charge, obviously. So you take that all together and think about it, and it's like, wow, now I could possibly go to prison for what we felt was doing our job, doing the best we could with what we had, and so that was difficult. But again, the community did come together. They were able to help us with our ability to pay for the attorneys and such. So it was really great to see that community support, honestly. And again, national organizations also assisting us along the way, which helped tremendously.
So that, thank you. I know that's not probably easy to talk about, but we really appreciate it because we don't, like I said, you're our first law enforcement officer that we've had on the show.
Awesome.
That has to impact, how you lead today. And so I wanted to make sure and get that out there. That's been over a decade ago now. You've since then, you spent some time away from law enforcement and decided to come back and then switch to the sheriff's department where you're now running for sheriff. What impact did that experience have on you in terms of how you deal with criminals? Because you probably know, and I guess suspects will say
right.
Criminals are convicted, right?
Right.
So you know that they committed a crime because they've been tried and convicted. But we're talking about suspects. Do you have a better understanding that you may or may not be dealing with someone who is guilty when you're confronted? Yes, somebody called and said this guy's breaking into my house. But if they say, hey, I'm not breaking in, I have permission or whatever, because you've been on the other side trying to say, hey, wait a minute, I was just trying to do my job. Does that make you more understanding? How does having been on that side impact your ability to be a better law enforcement officer because of that experience?
You know, what I like to talk about is, and I kind of preach it to my sergeants and our deputies, right? You always want to treat everybody as you would treat anybody else. Now, there's always something that could trigger a reaction from us. But the way I kind of look at whenever we go out for a call for service, because currently right now I am on the road because we lost one of our sergeants, so I'm actually filling in for that position. So I'm on the road. But what I tell the guys is, whenever we get a call for service, whether it's their dog ran away, or somebody broke into their home, or somebody stole their vehicle, or it could be anything, right? Whenever we respond to that call, it's that person's crisis that at that moment. It's not ours, it's theirs. So I think one of the biggest takeaways is to always listen, right? People want to be heard. People want to tell us what is happening, what the problem is. Not necessarily, you're not walking in, okay, I'm taking this person to jail without talking to them, right? I can tell you what kind of changed for me in the last probably 10 plus years is I have talked more people into handcuffs than having to fight them. Because there's always a better way. And I think, currently I'm a de-escalation instructor for our agency, and we kind of bring that home, to them, that it's easier to talk to somebody rather than just place them in handcuffs right away. Or ultimately, if they have to go to jail, you talk to them, you explain why you're doing what you're doing, and before you know it, you're able to take them into custody in a peaceful manner, rather than having to escalate it to a physical confrontation where a use of force is applied. Now, of course, ideally, that's what we all want to do, right? Not have to fight somebody or hurt somebody or actually use lethal force. Ultimately, that's the last thing we ever want to do. But, there's that build from talking to actually having to use force on someone. But I think it's important to me now that what I've learned most importantly is just talk to people and let them talk. Let them tell you their story, what their crisis is at that moment. Because ultimately, I think people just want to be heard. And once you start to listen, you could help them find a solution. It might not be the best solution, but it's a solution that will help them get out of their crisis that they're dealing with at that moment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you said something that I want to hear more about. How do you talk somebody into handcuffs? That's got to be that's a skill that I'd like to hear more about. Maybe you can share an example. You're in a situation where obviously an arrest needs to be made, and so the person has to be put into handcuffs. But you mentioned talking him into it. Talk to us through that example, because that sounds like that's great de-escalation. I think we all could use that. Sometimes we have to talk our kids into putting on their life jacket before they go swimming instead of just forcing it on them, right? Tell us about that situation maybe and how that works.
I can give you an example where I was, I won't get into too many specifics, but I was dispatched to a domestic, which is a fight between a husband and a wife. And it took me, we have a big county. We cover about 3,700 square miles. So it took me a little bit of time to get there. When I got there, gentleman's in one room, the wife's in the other room. And initially he was just like, you could tell he was ready to fight because he was upset, because obviously nobody ever likes to see law enforcement because that's their worst day, right? They don't want to see a cop walk up and now, here comes the big bad cop that's going to just take me to jail. So I literally remember this because it was kind of funny at the time after it was all said and done, because, I sat down and the guy, I always feel like you got to move yourself down to their level, right? So this gentleman's sitting on his bed. So I pulled up a chair. We just started talking. I'm like, what's going on today? He's like, well, this and this, and she made me upset. So we got into it. I'm like, okay, tell me how you got into it. Well, she came at me and started yelling, and I pushed her, and then and so forth and so forth. So we're talking, and, before you know it, we're just having a conversation about exactly what happened, right? And mind you, this guy was a big, tall gentleman. He towered over me. So I'm thinking, I'm the only guy up here. My other deputy was talking to the other party involved. And so I'm like, if he decides to get upset or attack me, it's going to be a fight. But, talking to him. So by the end of it, that conversation I had with him, I said, okay, I've got to do my investigation. I got to go talk to the other party. I'm going to have my deputy hang out here with you, and then I'm going to go and talk to the other person involved. So talking to her, I mean, the stories just matched. He didn't lie to me, and neither did she. Everything kind of added up. So I walked back into that room, and I'm like, all right, man, so here's what's going on. you guys got into it. You put your hands on her, and now I have to do what I have to do. So literally the gentleman stands up and he's like, okay, I got it. So I literally walked up, put him in handcuffs, and he walks out to my car. Right. So I get him in the back of my patrol car. And and this is kind of the funny part of it, because this is why it stands out to me. As I'm getting ready to leave, it was a call in the valley out in Eagle Nest. What ended up happening is we were driving Explorers at the time, so my car got stuck. So as I'm trying to leave, my car's not going anywhere. I'm like, oh man, we're in trouble. We're out in the middle of nowhere. So the guy's like, well, I can get out and help you push it. Now, obviously, I'm not going to uncuff him because he's arrested, but his wife came out and she's like, I'll pull you guys out so you guys can get on your way. And she understood. I mean, she wasn't, sometimes what ends up happening is when, you take your best friend, your husband, or your wife to jail, they're not too happy, but she understood what we were doing, and she actually helped us get our vehicle unstuck. And me and the gentleman, we actually conversed the entire way from Eagle Nest all the way to the jail here in Raton. And there was he wasn't upset. He understood what he did. And that's kind of cool when you're able to do that. And again, I've managed to do that more often than not, where it's a simple conversation. You want to hear their crisis. You want to hear what happened, what led up to it. But going down to their level, I would say treat everybody the same until, again, I think I might have mentioned this already, but you always treat every person you meet just like you would anybody else. Now, at the point where they take it to the next level, where there's a weapon presented, where they are hurting an innocent person, then we have to act on that. But, from the person that's panhandling down the street to the worst criminal, you always treat him the same unless they escalate that situation to where you have to use what you need to, whether it's, use your less lethal, God forbid you have to use your firearm, but you just treat everybody the same. And that's kind of what I tried to send home to a lot of the guys. You got to treat everybody the same. And at the point where they're trying to hurt you, an innocent person, then we have to take action. But you don't always have to walk in and just start, pushing your badge around. People just want to be heard. That's probably the biggest lesson.
That's not what we're hearing a lot. When I hear your approach to how you treat people, that's not the picture that media paints of law enforcement. This would be a good time for us to talk about, you took our YOS discovery, which is something we do at Why Not Leadership with all the leaders we work with. We work with leadership teams, from executive teams, law enforcement teams. We work with medical teams, and we always want to know, what is it that drives you? And so as I listen to your stories, one of the things I hear, Beto, is there's a lot of you that cares about people. So your why is contribute. What we know about people with the why of contribute, and for those of you who are regular listeners, you know about the YOS. We're going to talk about Beto's why, his how, and his what. Why does he do what he does? How does he go about it? And what is it that people can count on from him? So your why came back as contribute. You're somebody who, at the end of the day, you're driven by making a difference, by helping others. That's your number one driver. Everything that you do, you're looking to make a positive impact. And that's a lot of the reason probably why you're running for office, because you want to make an even bigger impact. Your how came back as make sense, which tells us that people with the how of make sense, that tells us you're someone who likes to solve problems. You thrive solving problems. You're good at making decisions quickly based on information available. As information changes, you're able to make different decisions. But people with the how of make sense tend to be really good at problem solving. So when you're put in a situation that other people might be overwhelmed by or need more time, you're able to really quickly take in that information and make a decision or make a recommendation based on the information you have. And your what came back as trust. And trust, people with the how, with the what of trust, what we know about you is you care about building relationships based on trust. And as you told the story about this gentleman in this domestic dispute, I could see all of that. You were there because you cared.
Mhm.
You showed him that you cared. You wanted to make a difference for him, a positive difference, even though it was already a bad situation.
Right.
You made sense of it. You helped him make sense of it. You took in all the information, explained it to him, and helped him understand that the only logical thing to do is to put him in handcuffs and take him to
Mhm.
jail. And you
Right.
built trust to the point where he even wanted to get out, and both him and his victim were willing to help you get unstuck from the mud so you could take
Right.
the suspect to jail. So tell me, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the results,
Mhm.
and how do you see yourself living into your Y operating system
Mhm.
where you're contributing, solving problems, and building trust?
As the big one, obviously, my why is contribute, right? I'm always wanting to help as much as I can, whether it's at home, whether it's at work, whether it's at church. I always like to. I've always been that person that just enjoys. I truly enjoy helping others. It makes me feel good. It it's just one of those things that from anything, just being able to help someone, that to me that makes a difference. And so that's big to me. And sometimes maybe I tend to once in a while overcommit. Um, and running, like currently right now, I'm running a campaign. I have a side business where I do photography. It's a lot to take in, and I try to make sure I am still not necessarily pleasing everyone, but still providing what I've done in the past, right? So I have a lot of people asking me to do photography for seniors. I'm like, okay, I'm going to schedule you, but I've got a meet and greet in Eagle Nest or whatever the case may be. So it tends to, I overwhelm myself. Fortunately, my wife keeps me balanced because she's like, hold on, let's organize you. Let's put you in a calendar, because thank God for her. If not, I would be a hot mess, even more than I already am. But so that helps. As far as my how makes sense, right? I truly enjoy just trying to figure out situations. I tell the guys, hey, if you call me with a question, you call me with a problem, I promise you, if I don't know the answer, I'm going to find it. I don't know all the answers. I mean, I've been doing this for over 18 years, but on the same token, with that being said, I don't know all the answers. So I use my resources. I'm very resourceful, from me calling people that I know in Albuquerque that work for APD to people that I know in Union County, whatever the case may be. I use my resources, state police, to find the answer. If there's always an answer, we just gotta, there's a right way and a wrong way. But
Right.
I absolutely enjoy doing that, to find that answer. And I think my going to my what, I always want to build that trust. I always want to be that person that, hey, you have a problem, you have something that I can help you with, come to me. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna hold it against you. I always tell the guys, if we have a conversation and it's something personal, that stays between you and I. Um, it's not something that I'm gonna hold against you or dangle over your head. Um, I'm I feel that I've built that relationship with my staff, and I would say, all the guys feel comfortable enough to say, "Hey, this is what's going on. What do you think? Hey, we'll figure out a solution. As long as you are willing to talk to me, I'll figure out something to help you." So I think that's kind of what drives my what. Because if you can't trust me, then I mean, how are you going to work with me? Or in the case that if I am elected as sheriff, how are you going to work for me? So that's important. I think that's really important, to have that trust and that ability for them to come and talk to me. Hey, I have that open door. I was tell the guys now, if I am elected, I'm going to pull the door off my hinges. I'll make it truly an open door policy, where you want to come in and talk to me. Hey, come in, sit down. Let's have a cup of coffee. Let's talk. What's going on? Um, and I think that's big. I think if you're the people that work for you can't trust you, you're going to have a difficult time leading them. and I try to focus on that and have that open door ability for people to come in and talk to you. So I think that's kind of how I sum up my why.
How that's really good. I really appreciate that. One of the things that I know of, from working with thousands of individuals and helping them discover their why, how, and what, is people with the how makes sense because you are so good at solving problems, because you can take in lots of information and really quickly digest it and come up with a solution. One of the challenges they have is they tend to be impatient because you process information faster than other people, right? You get it, you get the information, you're like, okay, I know what we need to do. But everybody else is still like, wait a minute, I have questions. How do you overcome that, especially as a leader?
Right.
So number one, that's one. The second one is, as a leader, one of the other things that happens is when you have the how makes sense, you tend to become the bottleneck because everybody knows that, hey, Lieutenant is really good at solving problems. Let's take it to him. And so everybody's always taking everything to you and then not learning problem solving skills for themselves. So then they're not taking care of they're not solving problems that they really could because they know you're such a good problem solver. So number one, how do you overcome your impatience with people who don't get it as fast as you do? And then secondly, how do you help people solve their own problems so that you don't become a bottleneck, so that when you're not on the call, they can still get things done?
Right. That's a good question. I think that's so true with my how, because I feel that I do process stuff pretty fast. I'm like, when they tell me the problem, I'm already jumping to Z in my head with a solution. Is it always the right decision or the right solution? No, but I'm already, thinking ahead. Okay, let's do the X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, they're like, wait a minute, what about this? Well, yeah, that's going to be a part of it, but it's still going to lead us to this, right? So I've had to really work on that, because I obviously, again, I'm always ready to go. I'm always thinking. I always tell the guys, it's kind of my way of approaching calls for service, right? It could be a simple motorist assist, and I'm already thinking, okay, what if I get there and let's just say that this person is wishing ill against me, right? And the only reason that they're on the side of the road is they're waiting for the first law enforcement officer to show up. Now, is that a bad way to think about it? No, it's just mentally preparing, right? So I'm always thinking worst case scenario sometimes in certain situations, because you want to be prepared for anything. So I think that kind of leads me to jumping from A to Z sometimes, but I've managed to control that, right? Okay, so this is my solution, working through it and say, hey guys, okay, this is what I think we should do. This is what I would normally consider that, might be a proper charge, or what we should, in the direction we should move. But slowing it down. Hey, tell me what you guys think. What have you learned, or what do you know about this particular state statute? Fill me in. Let me know what your thoughts are, because I'm already jumping ahead. So I think part of that is, again, slowing it down a little bit for myself and being patient. It is sometimes hard for me to get impatient because, again, I want to just move the process along. If we get information on I'll give you just an example of a drug house. Cool. Let's call DEA. Let's call, if we need FBI, let's start moving those wheels. So sometimes I got to get reined in, like, hold on, let's do a little bit more before we jump from A to Z. But it's been a challenge, but I've learned to slow it down a little too as well. I may have it might be the right decision in my head, but I've got to work through it so they have an understanding of how I got from point A to point B. If that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. And I share your how of makes sense. It's my what. So I know how hard it is sometimes to slow down and ask the questions. And so I think that's a really great way to deal with it. How do you currently keep yourself from being the bottleneck that everybody has to go through the lieutenant before they do anything, because you're the problem solver? And that happens. People with the how it makes sense, they're everybody's problem solver. I bet people come to you all the time. Hey, Beto, I got a problem. Let me run this by you. Can I bend your ear? Do you mind if I run something by you? Right? That happens all the time. But when you're in a leadership position, you can't solve every situation that happens in your department. So that's probably happening to you right now as a lieutenant. People come to you with problems all the time. How are you going to deal with it? How do you currently deal with it? And how do you see yourself dealing with it when you're in the top law enforcement office in the county, where there's a lot more problems to deal with and a lot more things people are going to want to bring to you?
You know, I think part of it is learning to delegate. That's important, right? You got to be able to say, hey, yeah, you may have the answer. However, kind of letting the guys or the person that's asking me kind of figure it out on their own first. Okay, so you have this case. How are you going to proceed with it? Typically, yeah, of course, they'd be like, hey, Lieutenant, so I got this. What do you think? Well, now I kind of turn it around. Okay, let's work through it. You tell me what you think we should go, what direction, what charges you feel are appropriate or not appropriate. And we'll look them up. You know, sitting there talking to somebody and trying to figure out proper charges without just giving them the answer, right? Because it's easy to say, yep, you want to go, you would just charge this, and you're done. But, you know, slowing down, saying, okay, did you talk to your sergeant? What did your sergeant say? Well, he told me this, or sometimes they'll be like, oh yeah, well, I just came straight to you. Well, let's kind of go through your chain of command, you know, talk to your sergeant, see what he comes up with. And then we'll go from there. And then you guys maybe give me the final product, right? The final warrant, the arrest warrant, the search warrant, whatever the case may be. I'll look through it. I'll do my research. And if it fits, perfect. You know, I'll give you the thumbs up and you guys can get it sworn in. You know, it's funny, like you said, a lot of people will, everybody wants to, well, you're the lieutenant, so you probably have an answer. You know, I can be walking down the street. Hey, I've had this problem with my neighbor. And I've had to learn to be like, okay, yeah, I get it. You have a problem, but we gotta use the right, call it chain of command, right? But go through central dispatch. You got to contact our dispatch. We'll send somebody out to talk to you, and we'll try to find you a solution. But rather than in the past, I'd be like, oh, hold on. You know, when I come back to work on Tuesday, I'll come out and we'll figure out a solution. You know, everything's not right this minute. Now, if it's you know, obviously an emergency, we're going to handle it, and I'm going to allocate resources as necessary. But everything's not an emergency. Sometimes it's something, a simple land dispute between two neighbors or whatever the case may be. But slowing it down, saying, okay, yeah, I need you to call dispatch. Let's go through dispatch. We'll send somebody out and we'll investigate it, rather than just jump in to try to give them a solution immediately, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So thank you for sharing that. You know, one of the things that I want to make sure we talk about is also, we like to, you know, people are getting to know you. You're running for a pretty important position. Tell us about, what are your plans? How do you plan? What's going to be different under Sheriff Dominguez than it is currently happening? What's you know, and it doesn't necessarily say, you're not saying that what's being done right now is not good, but what's going to be different or better under the new law and order of Beto Dominguez in Colfax County?
So to touch on that, currently, you know, Sheriff Baca, he's the current sheriff. He has put so many great things in place, right? From equipment to vehicles to weapons, you name it. We probably have the best technology that a small agency like ours could possibly have, right? So building off of that, he kind of made it. He set the platform, right? So you got to take his platform and continue to build from that and offer whatever we can that will benefit the county. So to me, obviously, you've known me all my life, brother. So I actually truly enjoy being out in the public, you know, going out and talking to people. I think that's important. Whether it's a local meeting or a local fundraiser or whatever the case may be. You know, Colfax, again, it's 3,700 square miles. So there's a lot of things going on pretty consistently throughout the county. So my plan is to attend these events, be a part of them. Places like Maxwell, Cimarron, and such, they have Eagle Nest as well. They have their monthly meetings. So my goal would be to try to attend as many of those as possible. Is it going to be possible every month? No, but you can shuffle your schedule around, I think, and make it happen. So I want to really, truly plan on attending some of those meetings. As part of that too, I think it's important right now to try to increase our numbers. We are, I think we're short 2 deputies right now. We have 2 positions possibly. So filling those positions, it's difficult because not very many people want to do law enforcement. It's not the most desirable thing out there anymore. At one point, everybody wanted to be a cop. Everybody wanted to do this job, but it's not as, I guess it's not just the career path that people are choosing nowadays. So my goal is to obviously continue to grow from where we're at currently. I think we're currently at 11, if I remember correctly. Yes. Currently at 11, including the sheriff, undersheriff, and myself. So not a very big agency to cover 3,700 square miles, right? But part of that is recruitment. I want to focus on recruitment. There's funding out there through the state that help smaller agencies recruit. So part of that is I plan on trying to go down to Santa Fe and see if we can get some of that money to help us grow our numbers. There's not a shortage of where to live, right? It's just getting the people here. I never thought I would love Colfax as much as I do now. We all grow up somewhere. You and I, we grow up in Albuquerque, but I never thought I would leave Albuquerque. And then living in Colfax has been such a, whenever you travel, you're like, oh, I just can't wait to get home. You literally think about that every time. When I'm traveling, I'm like, I can't wait to get home. No traffic, no craziness, and just be home, right? I never thought I'd be a small town person, but over the past 20 years of being here, I love it here. It's been such a great place to grow for my career, I should say, raise our children, and then from where, just moving forward, I intend to be here for a long time, and it's just my goal is to make the Colfax County Sheriff's Office. It's already good, but if I can make it great, I will do everything I can to make it great. I will anything in my power to keep our guys safe. Anything that'll in my power that keep Colfax County safe. I plan on doing it. We have a lot of resources. As a sheriff's office, again, I kind of mentioned earlier, we work with DEA, we work with the FBI, we work with New Mexico State Police. They are awesome in helping us on big crime scenes. Yes, we have a lot of equipment. Yes, we have a lot of training. We have a ton of training, but we don't always have everything that we need for certain situations. Well, that's when we contact our resources. And I think it's important to keep those relationships, right? Where you can say, hey, New Mexico State Police, can you guys help us on this scene? We're kind of, we don't know. We don't have the right tools, but to be able to call any of those agencies for assistance is pretty cool. And I think that's important to continue those relationships. And of course, continue to grow the relationship with our agency, with the community. Community engagement is huge. I think that's, if you have that community engagement, people see you out there. You're being visible. And that not just the sheriff, but I mean, that means all the deputies. Everybody just be out in the public. People want to see us in their neighborhood, want to see us cruising the back roads. I talked about that earlier in my campaign where, we're going to be on the back roads. And I think that's important. I fully intend. Now I understand, with the responsibility of being sheriff, there's a lot of responsibilities, but I fully intend on continuing to patrol. I've actually enjoyed being back on the road. It's been a pretty awesome experience to be working with the deputies side by side again. Heck, they've taught me some things that I kind of forgot. Heck, I couldn't figure out how to work my computer on the road, but I figured it out thanks to their help. And I think that's important. And, honestly, we have such a great crew. They're awesome. They truly are a great bunch of guys. They have the heart for it. They do the job to the best of their ability every single day, which that's all I ask. Just go out there, do your job, stay safe, and come home. That's what's important. As long as they come home every evening to their family, that's what's important. Everything else, it could be sorted out the next day. So I think that's important. So sorry, I kind of went on a tangent.
No, that's not a problem at all. Actually, that's really good. One of the things I want to make sure we do before we finish today is tell me about, it's not often we get a chance to talk to someone who does what you do. What's your most memorable call for service that you can remember, and what makes it memorable? And then we'll talk about why that is, and what's important about it.
Absolutely. So I'll tell you about this one that stands out, and it's a pretty. It was a pretty good end result. So we got a call for service. I was currently working for the Raton Police Department. We got a call for service of a female leaving her residence, emotionally distraught, and she also had taken a weapon. And so, with that being said, that's two things that are, that puts us up here. Like, okay, now we got to be extra careful because not only is she emotionally going through her crisis at that moment, right? There's a weapon involved. So now we've got that other piece that we've got to make sure we're cautious with. So what ended up, what ended up happening is we found the vehicle. I located the vehicle on a roadway, and obviously, again, using all of our tactics, we want to be careful because she does have a weapon. Well, I remember walking up to the vehicle, and first thing I see the female, and there is a weapon, and unfortunately, she had it pointed at herself. So I start talking to her. I'm like, hey, just put the gun down. Let's talk. Let's figure out a better solution, right? And she didn't respond to me like if I was even there, right? She's just kind of just blank stare. So at one point, the female points the gun away from me, not directly at me, and shoots around out the window. Basically shatters the window. So I had another officer with me at the time, and obviously we start backtracking, and we get back in our vehicles. So that's when we start using our PA system, right? To talk, because obviously she didn't want me that close. So, and she made it pretty evident by firing around. But she wasn't aiming at me. I want to make sure you guys know that she was not aiming at me. She just kind of shot it away from me just to tell me, like, get away. So I did. So that's when that communication, I always talk about, that de-escalation, right? So I can remember calling her phone probably about, I'm not exaggerating, about 40 to 50 times until she answered. So she finally answers, and first couple of times she would talk to me for 20 seconds and then hang up. Then I called again. Eventually, we opened that line of conversation, which was incredible. This was probably about 40 minutes into the incident, right? So we're talking, and just at one point, you got to remember, again, I always say that we're handling their crisis. It's not my crisis, it's their crisis, and they want to be heard. Hugely important. So I let her talk. We're just having a conversation back and forth. And this was about an hour into it. I just said, look, all we want to do is get you help. Just put the gun outside of the car. You're not going to jail. I'm going to walk up, and we'll figure out a solution from there. Woo. Just give me this. So, sorry. So it happened, right? She put the gun out. It's like, thank God. So I walked up to her. I told her exactly what I said. Hey, let's walk back to my car. Let's figure out how we're going to help you from here. So ultimately, she was taken to a hospital for further mental support, right? And And the funny part is one of my good friends is the one that transported her to the hospital. She had to go to Albuquerque. And, the conversation was great. It was awesome between them on the way there. And she's like, yeah, I got to tell you, ultimately, I just, he wouldn't shut up. So I decided to give up, which kind of all made us laugh after she said that. He called me and told me that. And I was like, hey, I guess I talked her ear off enough to not hurt herself. So end of the day, she got the help she needed, which was great. It was just amazing. And probably about 2-3 years later, not really close to that incident, I ran into her and her family, and it was cool to not necessarily how do I put it, just to see the fact that she was okay. That's a good feeling. So that was probably one of my favorite moments in my career, where it all worked out well.
That's a really good story. I noticed you got emotional. What about that makes you emotional? What happened that makes it so important that I noticed you got caught, you choked up a little bit.
I think it's a saying, right? You save the ones you can, the rest you got to let go. And that's kind of, unfortunately, that's law enforcement. You're not going to be able to save every person, every call for service that you go to. You're not going to be the person that gives them the solution. It might end bad. This could have ended a lot worse, right? She could have hurt herself. And to deal with that, the fact that you did everything you could and maybe she would have hurt herself, man, that would have been hard to live with. Because at one point, even though it's just a conversation, you form an attachment to that person when you're trying to help them through their crisis. So good, bad, and different. Ultimately, if it would have turned bad, I really don't know how I would have handled that. But to know that she's thriving, she's happy, she came out of that, let's call it that dark space wherever she was at, and she's good. That's a good feeling to see, a good result of a bad situation that could have been worse. Walking through, it's funny because again, I've been here for close to 20 years. It's pretty amazing when you see somebody that you dealt with at one point, right? It was when they were young, and for them to come up and say, hey, Beto, do you remember me? Be like, yeah, I do. And yeah, well, you had that long, stern conversation with me when you caught me doing bad stuff. But look at me now, I'm working, I'm doing this. And that is a good feeling. I always talk about law enforcement is the most thankless job in the world. It truly is. But it just takes that one thank you that just makes it all worth it. That kind of brings it all back and just kind of brings that energy back. Okay, got to find that next one that I can help or make a difference. And again, not every call you're going to be able to find the solution, but it's that 1 in 100 that people say that somebody will come back and tell you thanks. Makes it all worth it.
One of the things that as I'm hearing you tell that story, I'm former military also. At the point where she has a weapon and she's firing around, what kind of self-control, how did you maintain your composure to not take defensive action? I don't think anybody would have blamed you if you had at least drawn your weapon, which would have escalated, right? the situation, and not defend yourself, because there's a lethal round being fired out of a weapon that's in that car in your vicinity. How do you, again, you did what most people expect you to do. Say, oh, well, she wasn't aiming at you, but you don't know that. It doesn't take but a split second to go from here to here. Right. And that trigger's pretty quick to pull. So how did you maintain your composure enough to you backed away, you got in your
Mhm.
car and you started using your PA system. Sounds
Mhm.
like a lot of restraint. And I know you've had an experience where you've had an in custody death.
Mhm.
So that all probably weighs on your
Mhm.
mind, but this is split second. So
It is.
can you walk us through how did you not respond when that happened?
Well, so like I kind of mentioned, I did have a cover officer on the call with me, and he actually, I mean, I was walking up and he was ready with his lethal force, right? He had his weapon out. He had a visual, but I guess, um, it's all perception, right? I didn't, looking at her, she wasn't giving me that I want to hurt you look. She gave me that I need help. So you gotta you got to weigh that out, right? So if I mean, yeah, it's a split second. It could have very easily turned to me, and it could have been fired upon me. Would I have reacted? Probably. If it would have hit me, you always hope all that training, everything is going to kick in. So yeah. Now I can almost guarantee you, if I would have been injured, my cover officer probably would have fired upon her. Which again, that would have been just a whole other situation. Would have been, let's just say, would it have been justified? Maybe. Very likely it would have, because it was in defense of another officer in that case. But it's, I always say, you got to trust your gut, right? That's important. If you can't, if it doesn't feel right, don't do it. That didn't feel right. Yeah, I could have responded with my weapon or whatever the case may be, but it just didn't. It was that moment of, okay, she's not trying to hurt me, and that's what I told the other officers: just back up, get back to our cars. So, and that kind of, you got to think about that too. Yeah, we are faced with those split second decisions every single day. Not every single moment of every call, but sometimes that happens. If you would have done one or the other, regardless, it's probably going to be, how do I put it? It's going to be scrutinized, right? Good or bad or indifferent. Ultimately, if situations can turn bad, but sometimes you just got to trust your gut, your heart. What's it telling you? Does this person really want to hurt you, or are they just needing help? So that's important. If you can make that decision and everybody goes home, that's probably the most important thing. So yeah, I couldn't tell you. That's just maybe instinct that happened that day, and the feeling that I had that she was not trying to hurt me. She just wanted me to move away because I was too close.
Mhm. So thank you for sharing that. That's really important to, like I said, I don't know that I could have shown that kind of restraint. And again, you were there and you were perceptive enough to see that she needed more help than she needed
Mhm.
to be neutralized.
Right.
I guess would
Right.
be the word. Probably helped that you had somebody covering you, but
Mhm.
again, that's a split second decision. So
Yeah.
great job on that.
Thank
Beto,
you.
before we go,
Mhm.
what's different? People, you mentioned you've been in law enforcement almost 20 years. You've been
Mhm.
in the same place for those 20 years.
Mhm.
What's different about you today
Mhm.
than when you first started, and what about that makes you qualified to take the next step? Because this is not just about this is not going from assistant store manager to store manager. This isn't
Right.
going from substitute teacher to full-time teacher. This is
Right.
taking on the highest law enforcement position in the
Mhm.
county and setting the tone for Colfax County. What's different about you today than, let's say, even 5 years ago, that
Right.
makes you feel qualified to do
Mhm.
the job that you're looking to step into?
That's a good question. I think, there I would say within the last 8 years, knowledge is power, right? Training. There's I've gone through a lot of training, and you sometimes it's the same normal training that we have to do every year, but there's certain training that we've done that have, again, part of like what I mentioned, the de-escalation, right? To learn how to de-escalate, that's important. That wasn't how it was in 2005 when I started. Unfortunately, we did not know um, how to de-escalate. We were taught probably a block at the academy, but that wasn't the number one priority. The number one priority is doing what we had to do to get the person incarcerated. But that being said, I mean, I think maybe my patience has grown quite a bit. I think from then till now, the mental health, I think mental health is very important in law enforcement. I mean, I'm sure you guys have all heard of law enforcement officers taking their own lives, and that's probably one of the saddest things. One of the probably the worst notifications I get on my phone when that happens, because I'm subscribed to that. Whenever we lose someone, I think from 2005 till today, I think there has been a shift, right, where law enforcement officers back in the day were taught, hey, you just suck it up and deal with it. If you seeked out therapy, well, okay, maybe you just shouldn't be doing this job. Whereas to now, in my opinion, mental health is super important for law enforcement officers and their families' well-being. We actually, our current sheriff he's very on board with that, where we actually have an app that we can reach out if we need to talk to somebody. So going from 2005 till today, mental health, I think, is super important. I think, second of all, teaching that ability to deputies and to listen, right? That's important. We want to be able to listen. We want to be able to talk to people rather than just slap handcuffs on everybody that we meet. I think learning all of the different aspects of that, I feel that it's important to continue to develop that, especially in the culture of law enforcement right now, where, again, anything that's halfway negative will get turned into something completely twisted, where the whole story is not out there. I think it's important to get out in front of things, right? So with that being said, if there's an incident, we got to be transparent. Let's let people know, hey, this is what happened, this is what we're doing, and this is where the investigation is going. Because people want to know. Everybody wants to know what are we doing. So I think that's important, and I think that I could definitely continue to develop that. So I think a lot has changed, but most importantly, I think for me, the ability to lead this agency, it's been 18 years in the making, right? But do I know every single answer? Absolutely not. Do I still have a lot to learn? Yes, because if you're not learning, you're not moving forward in your career. I always tell everybody, the day you feel like you stop learning is the day maybe it's time to find another career, because if this job gets to that point to you, then you're going to become complacent and you're not going to give it your full potential. So I think constantly staying up with technology, staying up with the stuff that's happening out in our communities is important. So part of that, like I mentioned earlier, I think being involved in the community is important, and listening to people is very important, and their concerns. So with that being said, I think that's kind of where my leadership style has developed from, being the guy that just, all right, let's just take him to jail. Let's just be done. Whereas to where we are today, where we explore other options, how to talk to people, how to de-escalate, how to listen. That's important. And I think I try to emphasize that as much as I can, but that's kind of where it's taken me to this point in my career, I think.
Thank you for sharing that, Beto. It's been a real pleasure hearing about your development, hearing about your plans, and the service that you've provided to your community over the last 18 years. You've had some tough situations and you've survived. You've also had some very rewarding situations that have allowed you to really grow. I can see in the examples that you share a lot of growth in your leadership and in the way you handle um, yourself, your team, and the potential position that you're possibly stepping into. So we want to, on the Lead Different podcast, we want to wish you the best and wish you
Thank you.
luck in your endeavors.
Mhm.
What do you say we end the show on that note?
That sounds good. I appreciate it, and I truly do appreciate your time today. It was really awesome. And thank you for having me on today. I look forward to obviously talking to you again, probably sooner than later.
That sounds good. Beto, you expressed a lot today. You gave us some great answers. I want to encourage everybody, if you are listening to this in Colfax County, get out and vote. That's important. We live in a country that allows us the opportunity to make our preference known. So get out and vote. Find the candidate that you want to vote for. And if Beto is your candidate, don't forget to vote for him. One of the things I always encourage people, if you like him, please go out and vote, because don't assume that someone else is going to vote. Because if you like him and someone else doesn't, then, and if they vote and you don't, then that swings the election in the wrong way for you. But if you like the conversation today, to all our listeners on the Lead Different podcast, make sure you subscribe, follow, and share, and give us a comment. Share it with your friends. We're going to be airing this probably before the election, so you guys are getting a chance to hear from Beto on a deep conversation on why he does what he does, how he goes about it, and what it is that you can count on from him in his current position as a lieutenant with the sheriff's office, or in his potential future position as the top law enforcement officer in Colfax County. So, Beto, I'm going to give you another chance. I know you got the script, and at the end of the script, there's an answer you're supposed to give. So we're gonna give you another chance to finish the show off on the right note. What do you say we end the show on that note, Beto?
Dan. I agree with you. And if you just give me 1 second, I will definitely provide that correct answer. And my response would be why not?
There you go. Thank you, Beto. I knew you would do it. I know you'd read it, but we had such a long conversation, such a rich conversation that you probably forgot. But we got to get you on there saying why not, because we're Why Not Leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening today. Thank you, Beto, for being on. I know we went a little bit over, but this was definitely a worthwhile conversation. You've done a great job. We wish you the best in your election, and look forward to talking to you soon. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
You too. Bye-bye.